I don't think most people have realized right now we are each other. We're one, having multiple lives. The real royalty in this world has nothing to do with power, wealth, race, country, anything else. The real royalty is what you become. Not at all to pick on women, but the truth is that women can be as envious, as jealous, as of their own children as fathers can be. The highest, deepest, most fulfilling experience I have ever had is love. The first day she was in my apartment, I felt the presence of such light and peace and joy. That must be the goal and the meaning of all of this. This is it.
I honestly believe this is the best interview Doug Gillette has ever done. Instead of discussing his book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, we get to know Doug on an intimate level. We discuss his spiritual beliefs. We interpret dreams. We go over the trauma he experienced in his childhood with his mother. And we also talk about how man can become a generative man. Originally, Doug and I tried to conduct this interview online, and for whatever reason, we could not get technology to work the way we needed to. So instead of doing the interview online, I flew all the way to Chicago to meet Doug in person. I went to Chicago to interview a mentor, and I left Chicago with a friend. Now, before we jump into the podcast, 98% of you are not subscribed to the channel. Subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bell. And if you're listening on any of our streaming networks, follow us and give us a 5-star review. Anyways, my name is Duran Brown, and this is the podcast, Philosophy for Life. So, Doug, what happens after death?
Aha. Well, in my view, some of us anyway, maybe all of us, transition. It's a traumatic transition for many of us, but we transition to some other elsewhere, elsewhen, some other dimension of reality, capital R, and continue, I think, our journeys in expanded form. We complexify and become more and more inclusive persons. I've had several dreams that in the last couple of years that I don't know. I can't prove it. I'm not sure, but they have been very different from most of my dreams, and some of them feel like they may be glimpses, probably in symbolic rather than literal form, into, or like snapshots into things that I will experience after my biological death.
Do you think we have multiple lives? Do you believe in that?
I do. I don't know about reincarnation, although I think there is some evidence for that. But there are several ways that we could have multiple lives even without reincarnation. One is that, in my view, reincarnational experiences, I've had a couple that I might label that, could be functions of the collective consciousness. In other words, spirits, entities, consciousnesses that have been, are elsewhere, or will be, could be coming into our psyches and causing us to feel like it's us that have lived those lives. But I also think that one of my great spiritual heroes is Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi, 13th century, 14th century Sufi mystic, who envisioned what he called a series of way stations as we, both in this life and beyond this life, in different dimensions that we reach, we rest, we move on. We rest, we move on. So another way that we could have multiple lives right now,
Well, what is
and
the collective-
immediately.
What is the collective conscious, though?
Oh,
Like,
can I say this first?
yeah, go ahead.
And then I don't think most people have realized that we, right now, we are each other.
We're one.
We are one, having multiple lives. So, what is a collective consciousness? Jung's term for what is beyond the ego, but still, of which the ego is an expression, the individual person is an expression, was the collective unconscious. But he was eager to point out that what we call the unconscious is not unconscious. We are unconscious of it most of the time, as we are of most everything, actually. But it is conscious of us and can influence and does influence us. So that's why I call it, rather than Jung's term, the collective unconscious, I call it the collective consciousness. And I don't know how far that goes. I think it goes way beyond human being.
So you don't see the unconscious as like our minds necessarily running wildly. You see the unconscious as another outside entity that's aware of who we are, that tries to influence us.
Yeah, I see it as kind of potentially infinite space, quote unquote, in which there are all kinds of conscious entities that I think there is a conscious entity, huge, that encompasses all of these individuals and manifests as them. But yeah, I think there are multiple levels to it, just as there are multiple levels to our own more parochial individual psyches. I think the place is packed with consciousness and conscious individuations of consciousness.
So you think to a degree we're puppets, or we're like we're capsules, we're
interacting, I would say. Yeah, I think we're in partnerships that and I don't see us as puppets any more than other entities are puppets. But we're all interacting with each other in complex ways as persons and as personish, because I don't think all of the inhabitants of what we're calling the collective consciousness is personal in the fullest sense. I think there's such a thing as personish. That's where I would put the archetypes, by the way. I wouldn't call them persons. But I mean, to the extent that I think we're all part of somebody's plan.
Yeah.
In that sense, we're influenced, I would say. But I also think that we influence. So I think my own experience, for example, I'll use the colloquial term God. I call it God.
Yeah.
My experiences of that, as well as other, for want of a better word, spirits, is one of mutuality and partnership. It's co-creating. Of course, it's not an equal partnership because there's little me and then there's the big, but yeah, but it feels more like an interacting partnership, whatever it may be.
Okay. So do you think we have free will?
Oh, wow. Yes and no. Okay. No, in the sense that everything is one, always has been, is now, always will be. In other words, in timelessness, spacelessness, it just is. It just is. So that the unfolding of the isness, the eternal, and by eternal, I don't mean series of moments. I mean just is eternal now. In that, of course, there can be no free will because it just is. Everything that ever has been, is now, or will be, is in one moment, one. So, but on the other hand, I think it's like a coin. If you look at that side of the coin, everything is determined. Everything is what it is because it is just that. The other side of the coin, though, feels like free will. And it's as if we have some degree of free will anyway. And as if is good enough, because whoever is behind all of this is more than happy, it appears, to make what is into time and space in which there feels like there's free will. And if God thinks of something as if it were, as if it had free will, then it has free will because God has infinite capacity.
Yeah. You said that there might be this guy behind the whole scene that's controlling everything. Let's say that there is somebody that's controlling everything. What do you hope, like, the purpose of all of it is?
I hope, I don't know what the purpose is.
Yeah.
As I've often said in my classes, I don't know what reality is, capital R. Yeah. I don't know anyone who does or ever has. But my hope is that it is all for ultimate joy, love, exaltation, fulfillment, bliss. And if we do live many lives, either all at once or in multiple dimensions, all at once here in this dimension, we are each other, or in multiple levels of reality, or sequentially, in life after life after life, however you think about that, then because the highest, deepest, most fulfilling experience I have ever had is love, I think that the fact that it is the most fulfilling, most, well, I'll say fulfilling, but the greatest, most expansive, most fulfilling feeling that a human being can have, that must in quotes, that must be the goal and the meaning of all of this. At least the one that's the goal and meaning that's important to me.
Yeah.
God may have many purposes. It probably does.
Yeah.
Which I don't care about. They're not my business. My business is the most fulfilling feeling that I can feel.
I hear what you're saying. I was watching a podcast, and the question I was asked to, like, it was a group, it was a panel, and they asked, "Is life a game?" And each person said yes, right? But I wasn't thinking, I didn't agree with that answer. I've been thinking about this for a while. I personally think life is about expansion. A lot of times we have a lower class, we have upper class people. And a lot of times when we compare ourselves to each other, we say the upper class is better than us. But from what I've noticed, just from my experience from going from my neighborhood, that was a rough neighborhood. You have to deal with like violence and fear consistently. And then to go to a completely different environment. And I didn't only see this change in myself. I saw this change in other people that came from similar environments. After about 3 or 4 years, they became a better version of who they were. So since they've experienced everything that they could experience at one level, now they're expanding and they're rising up because now they want to experience something new.
Yeah.
And I've seen kids that I went to school with, like politicians' kids, famous athletes' kids who had things given to them, you know. They never experienced anything like that. And I've seen those kids who grew up pretty sheltered, who grew up, you know, basically with a silver spoon. They went in the opposite direction. And I don't think one is better than the other. I think that there's something within us that wants to expand. You even see it with kingdoms. When a kingdom is like running a specific area, they want to expand the kingdom, you know.
Yeah. The expanding the kingdom in a political way or military way in this dimension or any other, I think is a misdirection of what is intended.
Okay.
What is intended is for the person to expand. You know, so and that's more an imaginal, and I didn't say imaginary. I said imaginal. It's in a different realm of reality than the literalistic. I want to grow, so I guess I'll take over the neighborhood. You know?
Yeah.
That's a misunderstanding of what the call is.
We have done it throughout generations.
Oh, yes.
You know,
Yeah,
human beings have always wanted to expand their territory, get more money. You know, we've always wanted more and more, you know.
You talk about upper class and lower class too. I think that class is closer to classy than it has anything to do with financial or economic origins or cultural origins. I think and classy people come from all levels of society, levels defined by, as I told my daughter once, when she was struggling with peer pressure and so forth, and to take whether she was going to take the high road or the low road, and feeling sort of, I guess, inferior to girls that came from wealthy families and were often snotty, and to her, and mixed race too was involved, and so on. She, not them. I said, you know what, honey? The real royalty in this world has nothing to do with power, wealth, race, country, anything else. The real royalty is what you become.
Your character.
Your character. What you seek for your life, what you seek in terms of service to others, what you seek in terms of knowledge and so forth. That's royalty. The rest of it,
BS.
Yeah, really is.
Yeah. You know, on the internet, there's a lot of like men who have been deemed the leaders of the manosphere. They're leaders of men now. And one of the things that they say is that in order to be a high value man, you have to have money, you have to have a fancy car, you have to have X, Y, and Z. But I know that being a high value man has more to do with your character. It has to do with the way you treat people.
It has everything to do with your character, in my view. That kind of thinking that you just described is, first of all, you either have to be an atheist to feel that way. In other words, you don't believe there's a principal on the playground, and he or she who dies with the most toys wins, which is, to me, is an expression of despair, actually. Secondly, what were we talking? What did you just say?
high value man.
High value man.
Yeah.
Right. High value depends on whose values you're talking about. The value of an atheistic materialist are different from the values of someone who believes that life is for love and for giving and for helping and for being the best human being you can be. That's a whole different set of values.
Yeah.
So high value men in that sense, I would say what you're talking about is low value men.
Yeah. If anything outside of you gives you power, you can always have it taken from you.
That point of view reminds me of an early Protestant reformer, John Calvin, may he roast in hell, who believed that you could tell who was saved, who was going to heaven, based on how much wealth and success and power they'd had in conventional ways. Those are the people that God favors. And so you can see who's saved and who isn't based on their value, quote unquote. May he rest in hell.
You know, what's so funny is that I think that that's how our society is.
Yeah.
We base value on who has the most. They are seen as gods. We worship those people. You know, just our
we project. We miss. First of all, what you're just describing to me means we've missed the meaning of life. That's number one. People who feel that way have missed the meaning of life. Secondly, they're projecting onto others what they would have liked themselves to have lived and aren't. I mean, I think that's what happens with a lot of charismatic leaders, you know, whether it's in religion or sports or government or anything else. Why are they so charismatic? First of all, they're charismatic, in my view, because they're running away from reality. Second, they themselves are, and putting up false values because they won't really face themselves, reality of any kind, human or anything else. And so charismatic people are running, and they put up a series of masks, and that entices other people because a lot of people want to run from facing basic questions of character and value and what is the meaning of life. That's where they get their power.
You know, since we're on the topic of societies, in your research, have you ever seen a society, like what are the characteristics of a society that is mature? Like what has to happen?
I have never seen that.
In none of your research?
No.
Has there been societies that have been more mature than others?
I'm not sure there have ever been societies that are more mature than others, but I think there have been cultural achievements that have been more mature than others.
Okay.
On the part of certain individuals, you know, in many different societies.
So when it comes to a generative man, can you name a few men that you would see as like an ideal man that you would think young man could? Is there any man today that you would think you would call a generative man?
There are many men, I think, who are generative in limited ways, because we're all constrained by our levels of consciousness, by the opportunities that are put in front of us that we can do something with or not. There are all of these constraints. We're all limited. We're all sleepwalking to some significant degree, but there certainly are men who are generative in their own spheres. I mean, for example, I'm not going to name names, but I'm thinking of a couple of my university professors at the University of Chicago. They were brilliant contributors in their fields, and that to me was generative.
Mm-hmm.
But they were emotionally, a couple of them going on, I would say about 12. I see.
Wait, 12 years old?
12 years old emotionally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Consider that
I
a few
mean,
people.
you know, but they certainly were generative in their fields and important
specific area.
fields.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, there are lots of, I mean, you can think of all, let's just say somebody who is trying to make their neighborhood better.
Yeah.
Certainly generative in that respect.
Okay.
I don't know what their personal lives are like.
Okay.
Gandhi, for instance, generative man, but I've read, I don't know if it's true or not, that he was really rough with his wife.
I've heard that as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, none of us are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We're all flawed. A lot of us aren't even trying to be generative, though, in any field.
Yeah.
And generative, it seems to me, always has something to do with expanding human consciousness and human heart. I mean, consciousness for me is not just an intellectual thing. It is that, but it's also the heart or the emotional character of the person. That's generativity.
What are some key characteristics you would like to see in like a leader? If you had to make an ideal leader, what would you say? What would that leader look like?
Well, in terms of, I'm going to mention Robert Moore's and my system of the 4 archetypes.
Yeah.
I would say, for me, it would be a person who has the wisdom and intellect of the magician, the person that has the honorable qualities of the warrior, who's strong in that sense, not cruel, but firm and strong when he needs to be.
Yeah.
The tenderness of the lover and the heart expansion that is part of the lover archetype. Integrate those things into someone who is given, not seeks, but is given kingship.
Mm.
So kindness, but firmness, wisdom in making decisions of all kinds, and who is a leader who would, as a king, who would just as soon not be, but it's been handed to him, or it's been, or her. It's something that people have lifted him or her up into that position. I don't want this to be too simplistic, but or judgmental. But in general, I think people who seek power are exactly the wrong people to have it.
In your book, you mentioned the power, like the power drive.
Yeah.
And you say that it's important. The power drive is important to have. So what do you mean?
It is important to have, but for the right reasons. And here's where the magician comes in. They have to be wise reasons. People who, I'm thinking of men in particular, who have sought power supposedly in order to make their people more prosperous or to make their people stronger on the world scene or domestically, whatever. And that that's okay. But what happens is if you don't have enough magician energy, if you're not wise enough and smart enough and canny enough to separate and be honest about separating your true, pure desires to benefit your people, ultimately the world, from benefiting yourself, then the thing goes bad, goes sideways.
Mm. It always does.
It always does.
That's how kingdoms fall apart.
That's
Businesses
right.
fall apart.
Right.
Everything falls apart.
And even democracies.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. People start out, I think, often with good intentions, but they forget that their egos are
steering the ship.
Involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Intermingled. And they get to the point where they can't separate. Maybe they never could separate their own desires for aggrandizement and wealth and men, the case of men, women, and so on. They can't separate that from what they set out to do, which was to make society better.
Why do people become tyrannical?
Oh, there are many reasons for that. I would say part of it's temperament.
Okay.
There are some kids that are just born more, with a lot more initiative and aggression than other kids.
Okay.
Part of it's that. Part of it is it's the old nature nurture controversy, which has the most influence. Who you're born to be genetically, on the one hand, and who and how you are shaped by your caregivers or your environment, your early environment. So, but as a general rule, I would say that tyranny comes from acting out in public the wounds that you suffered as a child, feeling put down, feeling squashed, feeling however that happened. And so the desire for power over springs up as to compensate for feeling like a worm.
Yeah.
But some of it is just to say, as Alice Miller talks about in her books, in Developmental Psychologist, about the childhood of Adolf Hitler, for example. She has the theory, she's German, so she can say this, that what Hitler's main, unconscious to him, motivation was to show the world what his father had done to him. He imposed what his father did to him on Europe.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing is nurture, or the lack of it. And I think there's the misdirected desire to expand.
Yeah.
That's something that should happen, in my view, to the to the person. Expand psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, etc. It's misdirected when it is interpreted as the call to dominate more and more people. What needs to be dominated is one's own neuroses and psychoses.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Well, I already think I know how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the connection between the tyrant and the weakling?
Well, in a certain sense, the tyrant, the psyche, the undeveloped or unmatured or unwise psyche, not yet wise psyche, is constantly trying to compensate for its own exaggerations from different aspects of itself.
Yeah.
So that someone who feels inferior will tend to want to will exaggerate their aggression,
I see.
and vice versa. So that in Jung's theory, the psyche is always trying to reach balance, and if it's exaggerated in one direction, it will exaggerate in the opposite direction in order to try to. Yeah, I'm not sure that's completely valid, but I do think there's some truth in it.
Yeah. That part of your book stood out to me because my father was tyrannical. I didn't live with my father, but my parents grew up with each other. Our grandparents grew up with each other, and he literally lived like 3 houses down. So my father was close. I was close to my, and I saw the way he treated people. Like I couldn't go to like kids functions because of who my dad was, because people knew him in the neighborhood as being that, and he liked it though.
He liked it.
He loved it. He loved tormenting people, and that's why he was in prison for a good part of my childhood. But I stayed away from him for a long time. And I remember when I was in high school, when I was 14, he got out of prison and he stayed out of prison. And I never went to go stay at his house. And he asked my mom one time, he's like, hey, why doesn't Duran want to come and stay with me?
Yeah.
She knew why, but she didn't tell him. She said, I don't know. You ask him yourself. So he called me and I told him the truth. I said, I don't like the way you speak to the women you're with. I don't like the way you speak to my siblings. I feel like you show out for more for people who don't matter. And I feel like I'm becoming a man and you would try to prevent me from becoming the man I want to be. That's how I felt as a kid. I told him that. He went off. He went off. But, his girlfriend at the time told me later, it's like, he cried after that. And for the longest time, I really had like animosity towards my father. But one day he called me when I was like 21 and he was complaining about his dad. And my dad was like in his 40s and 50s. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be a grown man upset and complaining about my dad.
Yeah.
So when I was 22, I actually had a man-to-man conversation with my father. I told him how I felt, the things he did. And he just said, I'm sorry. I wasn't a good father. And then once he said that, I was surprised he said that. I thought he was going to cuss me out. But once he said that, I felt like, first of all, I felt like I couldn't be mad at him anymore because he apologized. And then I felt immature to even be upset with him. Because when he told me he wasn't a good father, part of me felt like, nah, you were the best father that you could be.
You could have been.
That you could have been. And
I
feel like I don't feel like a lot of guys get to that. I have a lot of friends. I have older men that I look up to. I don't feel like a lot of guys. They get stuck at like this battle between them and their father.
Yeah. Even without the unkind, let's say, behavior that your father showed, even without that dynamic, sons have to break free of the power of their fathers and their mothers. I'm not going to get. Should I even mention women and what they have to do? Men, in order to achieve gender identity for themselves as legitimately powerful, not tyrannical, but their own centered power, have to. They have to break the power over them that they imagine their parents have, whether the parents are good, bad, or indifferent. It still has to be done. And so yours, from what you're saying, was particularly dramatic, dramatic as well as traumatic.
Yes.
But even people that don't have that level of drama about it still have to break free of the power of the parents in order to be themselves. I'm talking about men here. Girls do too. Women do too, but it's a different dynamic there. I'll tell you a personal story about my breaking away from. My mother divorced my father before I was 2 years old. So I never really knew him. Saw him maybe 3 times in my life. Um, that's not the most powerful story. I did contact him. He was living in the Philippines years later when I was like in the 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, living in the
Well,
Philippines. And um and that was a powerful and a healing experience.
okay.
Um but the person, but because I wasn't living with him, he wasn't a factor in my life really
Yeah.
until I got older and realized, I need to have a dad,
Mm-hmm.
So I went and looked for him, found him, and um he said similar things. I'm sorry, and
Yeah.
but the person I really had to break free of emotionally, psychologically, was my mother.
Yeah.
Because she was a single mother with my brother and I, and my mother, she was an high school English teacher, honors English classes, and but she was deeply, deeply wounded by having been left as a high school girl by the love of her life and never got over it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And other things. She was a romantic who would not allow herself to be romantic in her conscious life.
I see.
She was very domineering and tried to interfere with my love life while I was living at home and so forth, so on. A few months into my own analysis, Jungian analysis, and that's what I was working on first in my analysis was I'd always fought my mother, growing up, so I never lost my balls, I didn't. And she was after them, but I never lost them. But I had a lot of anger and resentment, as well. I never stopped loving her either, though. But one time, several months after starting my analysis, I went home to visit her, and we were arguing as often we did. And she said something, and I said, "God All Mother Mighty." I meant to say, "God Almighty Mother." I said, "God All Mother Mighty." And there was this incredible silence where we both realized what I had been experiencing with her, that she was the goddess,
Yeah.
And she realized it too. And in that moment, all that power was broken.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw her as a sibling, as my sister. In other words, we're all brothers and sisters, and we're all on equal footing before the real God All Mother Mighty,
the real controller,
right? Yeah. And that was talk about a bolt out of the blue.
Yeah.
And it changed the whole character of our relationship and made it possible for me emotionally to take her into our house when she became senile.
Yeah.
And care for her and the rest of her life.
It's weird. With my father, once he apologized and I forgave him, I was able to see him. Because for the longest, I was seeing him through a child's eyes. But then once I became a man and I was going through things I was going through, I was able to see him through a man's eyes.
Yeah.
My dad had his own trauma. He had his own trauma and he had his own journey.
Yep.
We're wired completely differently.
Yep.
But he's also not the same person he was when I was growing up.
That's true too.
The way he is with his grandkids and stuff, like I couldn't be mad at him. I knew that if I were to stay mad at him, it'll be me being immature. I knew that for a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. If the power of whatever that, it's a complex, father complex, mother complex, etc. If the power of that is broken on one side, it usually is broken on the other side too.
Yeah.
It's just, it was a a kind of sickness or dysfunction, let's say, of the two people involved that can be healed in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when consciousness moves to a different level, and you're free and he's free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just be yourself.
Yeah. Right.
You know what's so weird about all that is that the relationship with my mother got worse. As I became more mature and became more of a man, it's like my mother started to resent me. Like I feel like to this day, I have more of an issue with my mother.
Okay.
Like my mom, I'm the first person in my family to purchase a house. I'm the first one to own a house, first to go to college. My mom didn't go to my graduation, the first one.
Ooh.
She said, she told me, anybody can do what you do. You're no better than anybody. And she didn't come.
Oh, wow.
But my dad came, the person who I barely went to go see, but he came and my siblings came. And,
wow.
And then when I graduated from grad school, I told her, I didn't want her to be there. And she did come. Her friends actually flew in from different states as well. And we had a conversation. But I felt like me in my adulthood, being responsible, being independent has created some level of resentment.
Yeah. And see, that's what I was fighting growing up with my mother.
Okay.
Too. But I fortunately had this event that broke, it just broke the craziness between us.
Yeah.
But I mean, not at all to pick on women, but the truth is that women can be as envious, as jealous as of their own children as fathers can be. You know, post-feminism, nobody wants to talk about that. But the truth is, women are just as crazy as men.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
I know that for
I
a
do
fact.
too. I do too. You know, so I mean, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Okay.
It's too bad that there hasn't been a moment yet or a series thereof where you and she could really.
I feel like it's gotten better since I called her out and we had our moment. But I feel like even though she's around and she hangs out, a part of her is always, when we're on the phone, the conversations are lovely, but when she sees it, she sees me creating and building things that I said I was going to build. I can see it in the face for a second,
yeah, that's too bad.
Like a competitor.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, women as men come under the possession of various archetypes. And in Jung's terms, it's the tyrant hold, or Joseph Campbell's terms, with men, it's the tyrant hold fast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he calls it. It's the guy who never lived the life he really wanted. And
coward.
He's a coward in a way. Yeah.
Coward.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to take the risk, but he sees other people taking the risk.
Right.
And going for the things they want to go for and they don't like it. I've seen that a lot.
Angry, bitter, envious. When you see older men putting younger men down, you know you're in the presence of a tyrant. Hold fast.
Okay.
A man who has become rigid and does not have a happy old age in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Same with women. Women can be, they're often very jealous of their daughters if their daughters get further in life than they did.
Okay.
Or have happier marriages, or et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
Yeah. And women that have been very disappointed by, let's put it that way, by men, can unconsciously take that out on their sons. You know, what they wanted to do was beat the crap out of their husbands or lovers, but that wasn't possible.
So they make their
so
sons
they do that with their sons.
Huh. Mothers prevent their sons from growing up.
Yeah, they do.
I have younger brothers who still haven't, but I can see why.
Yeah.
My mom won't let them grow up.
Yeah, they're like most things with the psyche, it's so complex. I mean, there's this set of motivations, that set of motivations, etc. More kindly disposed women, at least on the surface, may not want their sons or daughters to grow up because they remember them as babies, as their babies.
So yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, I would say that's part of it. Don't want the baby to grow up. That's a part of it as well. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So that's in there too, and that's honest, but it's not malicious.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. So we are complex creatures. It is difficult to be a human being.
I will have to agree. For me, when I see somebody doing something, they're getting success doing it. Mm-hmm. For me, it registers as, oh, I should learn from this person, or I should copy this person. Mm-hmm. And I've lost a few friends over the last decade through jealousy, and I think like, man, why didn't you ever ask me for help, or why didn't you, when we had these conversations, why didn't you just do what that person did like I did? Just it's in the book, just copy the success. But it's like not everybody's wired to think like
to feel like that.
Yes.
Yeah. There's envy is it's a terrible psychological affliction. It hurts the person that envies as much as it hurts the person that they envy. It is what do they call it? Well, it's a projection. Envy is always the projection of your own unlived life. For example, I don't envy mathematical geniuses because that's not a part of me that I haven't lived. I mean, I'm horrible at math. I always will be. So I don't care.
Yeah.
But someone who has had, and it's not just anybody, it's, I don't envy, I told you my spiritual hero, one of my spiritual heroes, Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi.
Yeah.
He's safely dead, so I don't have to envy him too much. But I don't envy him anyway because I've lived a lot of what he lived.
Yes.
And so I'm okay. I'm okay with that. And that he's more famous than I will ever be. That's fine.
For the record, I haven't heard of him. So.
You haven't heard of him. Well, but there, I have to say, there are writers that I do feel a pang of. I'm not sure if it's envy. It might be, but it feels more like, actually, you don't deserve the position you've been elevated to.
Yeah.
As a thinker,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that, part of that may be envy, but on the other hand, I never wanted to be like them. I think I'm smarter, actually, and a better writer.
That's why I asked you about Jordan Peterson. I want to know what you thought, because there's a lot of people, not just him, but there's a lot of people in the male space that are like the leaders of that space. But I don't feel like they've invested as much time, not only into understanding themselves, but understanding like other cultures. You've been researching this for like 40 years, 40, 50 years, so that's why. But
60, let's put it, it's actually 65 because I'm almost 75. And since as long as I can remember, I've been researching other cultures and ancient civilizations and et cetera, my whole life.
On the topic of envy, it's weird. Yesterday, yesterday, I was thinking about my uncle, and I was thinking about a good friend of mine that we had a fallout, right? And I was thinking about my uncle as I was driving. He used to take me to go to the movies. He was like my father figure. My father was around, but he was always locked up, and I had a stepfather. but I was always with my uncle. I love my uncle. I ride my bike and go to his house just to sit there and watch Discovery Channel.
Yeah.
So anyways, I had a thought about my uncle and like the memories that we had, right? But we kind of don't talk. We're not as close as we used to be because of envy. And it's not just necessarily with me, but it's with everybody who's been
successful.
It's like life stopped for him after 18.
Yeah.
Like that. He didn't do anything, jobless, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But when you're a kid, you don't see that. You just love the person.
Right.
But I thought about him, and then I thought about a friend of mine who I had a fallout with about 3 years ago. And as I'm preparing for this show, sitting on my couch, making sure everything's put together, my uncle texts me out of the blue. We don't talk. It's like years can go by. He texts me, "Hey, nephew, I was just thinking about you, and I want you to know I love you."
Oh, wow.
Weird. After I was just thinking about it.
Wow.
Then I'll go to the airport, and I'm walking to the airport, and I look down at my ticket, and it says I'm at B something. So I'm looking for B. I see B, then I see this tall kid that's in pretty good shape, and then right next to him is my friend at the airport that I had a fallout with that lives in a different state, and and it was really good seeing each other. You know, and
wow.
It was really good. And I'm just wondering, like, what do you think that is all about? Like, have you had those moments where you'll think of somebody, they'll call you, you think of something like,
oh yeah, I've had a lot of those moments.
Why do you think that happens?
I think that we are all connected. We are all one. That's the background. And then I think the souls that we are engaged with or have been engaged with, and certainly it could be casually, but more likely intimately,
Yes,
closely. I guess I think that there's reasons for that. That there are reasons for these particular people being fellow journeyers of ours, either from a former life, present life, or future life, whatever, some other dimension. I think that, I don't know why. As I said, I don't know what reality is, and but I do think it's meaningful. I mean, I can say, I tell you this story. It's similar.
Okay,
a little different, but similar.
Yeah.
Meeting my my present wife. We've been married 27 years. Very, very happily. When I met her, this is weird, but I met her because I needed somebody to come in and cook and clean once a week in my apartment, because I was just starting to take care of my mother, and I realized I couldn't do it without help.
Yes. So
I asked my then present girlfriend if she knew anybody that might be open to that. Well, she said, yeah, Olga. So I interviewed a couple of women. My present wife was one of them.
Yeah.
And here's something really weird, Daron. Two things that happened that presaged this, that came before I even called her or knew I was going to need help.
Yeah.
The second one I did know. The first one was I saw a magazine in the lobby of the apartment building where I lived at the time, and it had a picture on it of this Mexican Maya young woman. And I saw that picture and I said, that's the woman I'm going to marry. And I felt that it just came out of the blue. And I felt it was so strong that I took the magazine, borrowed it, had the cover copied, put it back, and kept that picture in my apartment. And then after that was several months before I set up these interviews with a couple of women to come in and cook and clean once a week. And the thought just out of the blue came to me. It said, you're going to marry the woman that you hire. Okay. So I hired Olga. as it turned out, but she was married. So I said, oh, okay, well, I guess that was bullshit, you know? So, but as time passed, and by the way, she looked like the picture of as time passed, she started telling me a little more about her marriage and how awful it was. And we finally, like 9 or 10 months later, made a plan. I came to love her purely, no strings attached, never touched each other, just, but I saw a person of real worth.
Yeah.
That I wanted to help.
Chemical connection.
Chemical, psychic, whatever.
Spiritual,
spiritual, yeah. So we made a plan for me to come down and help her get to a distant airport, because when the husband and his 2 brothers got home, all pistol packing, they would know what airport to go to. No. But anyway, she said, and the first day I go back up a little bit. The first day she was in my apartment, I felt the presence of such light and peace and joy. And all my previous relationships had been struggles, really. And I just said, this is it. This is it. Do you have a sister? You know? And she said the first time she heard my voice on the phone calling her to set up the interview, she said, I felt like I had heard that voice before and a long, long time ago.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And when we met, she said, I just knew we were going to be together. Even though she was married miserably. But,
yes.
And so, I mean, we are connected, and there are souls that have journeyed together before that are particularly connected. I mean, that have journeyed before, and time is so weird. It may be that they will journey in the future and haven't journeyed before. It's an echo from the future. But anyway, I do think we travel in pods, like whale pods, you know?
Through different lifetimes. You meet these.
I do think so. Yeah.
You meet the same people just in a different capsule or something like that.
Yeah, different guys, different, but there's a recognition.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, I feel you. I've thought the same thing before.
Yeah.
Since we're on a topic like this, I want to get into dreams. And I've been holding off this story because I had a freaky dream, I want to say, about 3 years ago. I ran into a woman that I hadn't seen in like years, right? And ran into her at the gym. And it didn't end well. Right. So went home, and in the dream we were both laying on the bed, right? And then cops bust into the door, news reporters bust into the door, and they're asking her, did she kill somebody? Did you kill this person and that? And then she gets up out the bed and she's like, Duran, I can't be here. She's getting out of the bed and she's going through the cops and police reporters, but then the cops and the reporters are surrounding me in the bed. And they're saying, accusing her of killing. I'm thinking like, did she kill somebody? Did she really kill somebody? What? And then all of a sudden I say, she didn't kill anybody. And all of a sudden, poof, everybody disappears. I'm in space. I'm floating in space. There's stars. I can see the stars. Yeah. And all of a sudden there's like gas smoke, like galaxy type of gas smoke. And then I like float through it. And then I'm going into like another dimension. And in that dimension, I'm talking to a guy that was also dating that girl at some point in time. He's telling me about the girl and telling me the things that they did. And I'm like, whatever. But I'm looking for the girl. I'm looking for her because she went out the room. And then I catch a glimpse of her leaving or escaping out of a door, and I see a glimpse of her. She's like, Duran, I can't be here. So I follow her through that door, and it's pitch black again, and I'm going through a series of like these gas bubbles. And then the last one, I see her on like, it's a completely grass field. The field is completely grass.
Yeah.
Nothing around, and there's one tree in the middle of nowhere. And then I yell out her name. She looks back. She falls, and then I carry her to her father. So I wake up, and then it felt real. It felt powerful.
Yeah.
Right? So I felt like in the dream I was going through her memories. So I contacted her, and I said, hey, I had this dream about you. Yada yada. Explained it a little bit. And she said, oh, let's meet up. So I tell her the dream, and then she tells me that she lost her boyfriend in an avalanche when she ran into me, and they were both skiing. It was her idea to go to this part of the mountain. It was closed off, but she went to the part of the mountain, triggered an avalanche. She got out the way, he didn't. He died, and she felt responsible, guilty for killing this dude.
Oh, okay.
And then I was like, oh, it's so trippy that
Yeah.
you can have a dream like that,
Yeah.
and then have like this connection with somebody.
Yeah.
You can get things like that. Do you think there's a deeper story with dreams, something more deeper, or?
Oh, yeah. I think most dreams have several, at least, layers of meaning. I'm not even gonna. It's so complicated. I'm not even gonna try to interpret it. But I do think. See, obviously, she had killed someone.
Yeah.
I mean, not, but by accident. But and so your dream, she or someone else who could be incarnate or not, wanted for some reason for you to know that.
And that she felt guilty for it.
And that she felt guilty about it. Yeah. And people can communicate through dreams. I do know that. And they don't know that they're even doing it, But as Jung said, there are no secrets in the unconscious, in the collective unconscious. So everybody knows everybody else, more or less. And so, I mean, what's happened since then with her?
We had a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was a dream in which you were reaching out to her, and or she was reaching out to you, and or some other entity, hopefully more pleasant than Synota, was trying to connect you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And happily?
It was a freaky dream.
No, but I mean, yeah. Yeah, you're connecting.
I'm not going to say too much about the relationship.
Okay, all right.
I'll tell you that offline. Though.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, you were supposed to connect. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird, man. And I was having a few freaky dreams. Remember I told you the way I discovered Carl Jung is because I had bought his book, Interpretation of Dreams.
Yeah.
I had another dream with a woman I was really good friends with. Never touched, never did anything to her. Just like one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And went out to go see her in her country, and she fell in love with me. She didn't tell me, but she was really mean to me, toxic. And I was stuck. There because I'm in her country. And it was there for weeks. And it was horrible.
Oh, wow.
And I got back to the States. And then when I get back to the States, she tells me, oh, D, I got something to tell you. This is what happened. I was falling. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, you're going to ruin the trip and potentially ruin our friendship because you had a crush on me, right? I was like, that's what kids do. We're not friends now, but I'm gonna tell you, I had a dream. She was gonna come out before COVID to stay with me, right? But then she was calm for a while, but then the person she was when I went to go see her came out again. And I was like, this isn't gonna work.
Okay.
So anyways, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was in this complete black room, and then there was a door. I walked through the door, and it's a hallway. Super white. It's like pitch white, and she's sitting at a desk writing, and the desk is white. So everything's white. It's a completely white hallway. And then she said, like, D, are you cheating on me? I wasn't, but I mean, I was checking out some girl. And she said, D, you cheating on me? I was like, no. And she was just like writing. She's like, oh, you're such a liar. And then I was like, I was like, no, I'm not lying. And then her face starts to like grow, like her smile starts to grow. And she starts to form into like this creature. And then she jumps at me, punch her in the face. And then she gets on the ceiling. She's smiling at me the whole time. And then she runs down the hallway, and I'm chasing her at this time because I didn't want her to get out of my sight. Because, it kind of freaked me out. So I was like, I got to make sure I at least keep this thing in my point of view.
Yeah.
And then she goes into this door, looks at me, and then closes the door, right? And then I bust through the door, and it's a complete black room. And then the door shuts, and I'm in this black room. And then I wake up. And then I told her about this dream. And she said, yeah, the dream's telling you to stay away from me.
Yeah.
That's what she was telling me.
Yeah.
It was telling you to stay away from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me say this about dreams too. I think it's partially true, but not wholly true, that what Jung said, that whatever else the figures in dreams are, they are aspects of ourselves.
So whatever the figure in the dreams are, they're aspects of who we are.
Of who we are.
Got you.
Two, they may be referring to actual people, and then you're talking about two dreams that did refer to actual people, but they're also, according to Jung, referring to aspects of ourselves. In other words, in the case of those two dreams, the inner feminine.
Yes.
Your inner feminine.
I understand.
And it's probably your inner feminine may be in some disarray.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is maybe why you get attracted to
these crazy women.
Yeah.
Probably because what's crazy is that I've had plenty of great women who are very kind to me.
Yeah.
And I always made the excuse like, oh, I'm focused on football, focused on my career.
Yeah.
Never gave them the time of day.
Yeah.
But once you get ready for it, like those women aren't there,
Mm-hmm. In my case, once I was ready for it,
it came.
It was right there at my front door.
Okay.
She came. But until I got my inner, Jung called it the anima, the inner feminine of a man, which is multifaceted too.
Yes.
Once you get that, you make your peace with the parts of it that you can, and the parts of it you can't, you kick them out. But you get right, and a lot of that comes from the mother. Not all of it, but a lot of it is subtle undertones and whatnot from the relationship with the mother.
I believe it.
Yeah. And I guess I ended up, I did for a period of time, in relationships in which the woman was abusive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had experienced that once time. Yeah.
Yes. And even if not openly abusive, certainly not the right woman for me.
Yes.
But once several things came together for me. I was at a certain point in my therapy where I was getting a lot integrated.
Yeah.
and also the men's movement happened for me at that time, and the books came out of that.
Yeah.
And and I was also researching the ancient Maya. So of course a magazine with a picture of a Maya woman on it would show up, and the woman that comes to my door to be interviewed looks just like that.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then another catalyzing thing was my mother got really sick. She had double pneumonia, and at that point, I had to finally recognize that she was senile.
Yes.
And I had to completely take over all of her stuff, sell the house, and fulfill my promise to her that I would take care of her. But anyway, the point for me was that it woke me up. All of that stuff together woke me up. I was 45, 46 years old, and I realized, bang, this isn't a game anymore. My parents are both, my father had already died. My mother's going to die. When am I going to start living a life, like a man?
Yeah.
And make an actual family.
Yeah.
And it woke me up, and it was a matter of, it was another one of those moments like that God Almighty moment, which had happened a few years earlier, in which I was like, okay, I'm in a different space, different phase of my life, just like that.
Yeah.
And when I made that transition, or when it was made for me, then somebody like my present wife was exactly the right person.
Mm-hmm.
If I had met her 10 years before, or even 5 years before, I wouldn't have been interested. I was interested in rougher women.
Okay.
Who wouldn't be good mothers and wouldn't be good, And suddenly everything changed. Everything changed.
You mentioned that Jung, he mentioned that dreams are like reflections of who we are. When I was a kid, I used to think that I was destined for something. Like I would have these dreams where I was like a superhero. Like it'd be me and like two other guys, and we're in a mansion, and it's a bunch of vampires around, and we're shooting these vampires, and they're trying to kill me, but they can't kill me. And I find a way I've had this dream, I promise you, since from the age about 5 to 18, I've had like these dreams where I'm fighting this demon and I'm winning. Mm-hmm. The demon tries to hurt me. It can't hurt me. I kill it. I get it. And because I had this dream, it just convinced me that I was like, no matter how much pain or anything I went through, I'd had to keep pushing because I'm supposed to be like this hero to an extent. So yeah, I promise you, I had a dream where it was always like either like a vampire, werewolf, some kind of ghoul, and any person would be frightened of this monster, but I was never frightened. I always confronted it, slayed it. Just
good for you.
And I haven't had a dream like that in a while, and I haven't really connected with that part of the hero part of me in a while. I don't know why, but
probably don't know.
Yeah,
but probably because you accomplished what you needed to accomplish to get to that point.
I see.
The dream isn't necessary unless it happens again. Then you'll find out. But
yeah,
the unconscious pushes us using every device that it can, including food poisoning or whatever, pushes us to trying to get to the ego to convey its desires, the unconscious, its desires, its wisdom, its whatever. And we are tone deaf, but once the unconscious can either break through to the ego in a straightforward way, or break through to it by sabotaging often the
Mhm.
conscious plans.
Yeah.
But anyway, once the breakthrough is made, you don't need to have that same dream again.
I never thought of it like that, but as you were speaking, I was thinking about what was I going through at that time, and I was in a harder environment. I was around. This is what happened. Honestly, I love school. I was one of the best students from kindergarten to third grade. Once I hit fourth grade, I had a tyrannical teacher. He used to beat the students. One time he was sitting at his desk, and there was this guy I used to have a lot of fights with. I didn't like him, but we sat right next to each other. And one time the teacher had just had a newborn son. He had his son sitting in like the baby seat in front of the class. Baby starts crying, like babies cry. The teacher gets up and says, what the fuck you do to my kid?
Oh,
He goes up to the guy that's sitting next to me and he's yelling at him, what the fuck you do to my kid? He's like, dude looks at him like, I remember his name, Calvin. He looked at him like, I didn't touch your kid. What are you talking about? The teacher grabs him by one arm and throws him across the classroom. And then I didn't like this kid at all, but I stood up for him. I was like, hey, you can't do that, This teacher, he had problems. He
had problems.
He pinned me and my friend up against the wall. Once that happened, I told my dad. And everybody knows how my dad is. Once I told my dad, it was over with. It was over with.
Yeah.
He got out of there. But when he was there, I remember they sat us at a table called Menace of Society, and they would not teach us. He would sit us in the corner and wouldn't teach us. We didn't have no books. And some of the kids would like play around. But I remember telling my friend, and my friend, ironically, he just got out of prison. He was in prison for 14 years. And he called me when he got out about a month ago. And I remember we were in class and that happened. I said, Matt Ezel, he's trying to make us stupid. I was like, he's trying to make us stupid.
Yeah.
And I've had teachers. I've met some great teachers. I had a few teachers that really helped me, and them helping me helped me become who I am.
Yeah.
But ever since fourth grade, I've had teachers that just saw me as the athlete. They didn't really want to.
Yeah.
They didn't want to really help me. So I feel like probably because I was in that environment, I felt like the world was against me. I had to be that hero.
Right.
I told you when I got here, I spoke to the administrative director of my high school. The reason they let me in that high school, because when I was in 8th grade, we didn't have homework, we didn't have tests. They graded us based off of how for example, I had a teacher one time, he gave me a C. I was one of the best students in my class in math. He didn't know this, but he gave me a C in math, gave this girl, Leonella, a known her since kindergarten. Gave her an A. I know she's not good at math. And I stood up like, hey, you gave her an A, gave me a C. I said, I'm smarter than her. And he's like, sit down, Mr. Brown. I was like, you put anything up there, I'll get it right. He put 10 problems up there, I got it right. She couldn't answer any of them. And he really wanted to give her a hard time. So he gave me a B, let her keep an A. And then he told me later, he tried to talk to me after class about my potential. And I was like, man, you can't tell me nothing about my potential. You gave me a C without any exam.
Yeah.
That lets me know what you think of my potential.
Yeah.
But when I was in 8th grade, I went to one of the best high schools in the Bay Area. It was super expensive, but I went for free. And the reason I got in is because I called the school myself. I set up the meetings. My mom didn't want me to go to that school. She wanted me to go to a predominantly private black school. That school is a predominantly white school. I didn't know anything about race at that time. But I wanted to go to that school. They had a good football team. So I called the school.
Oh, okay.
They found out about who I am, saw my film. I set up the meetings. I went out to go see them. And I didn't know it at the time, but he told me later, he was like, a lot of these kids that go to this school, their parents do everything for them. He's like, you're the only kid who
did it for himself.
Who called. So he's like,
Yeah.
okay, he gave me an opportunity.
Yeah.
And we're good friends to this day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah. I've experienced too, the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, and a door opens and I have an opportunity. I don't mean it's ever worked for. That's why I was talking before about this partnership or this mutual interaction with, you have to do your own work. You have to do your homework. You have to do your work as part of the partnership. But if you do, as you did in that situation, a door will open.
I see.
Yeah. A door will open. The first door that opens might not be exactly the right door, but it's good enough for now. And new opportunities arise because you're doing your part, you're fulfilling your part of the partnership. That's what I think.
I see. It's an agreement.
It's an agreement. I just say it in a general way that I've gone on strike against the cosmos, against the universe, against whoever, whatever's in charge, and just said, no, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't hear the voices or anything, but it's like they get together over there and they say, oh, okay, you won't do this. Well, let's try him on this, and they throw that at me, and I say, no. And they'll try something else. I say, no. And finally they say, okay, he's serious. Let's give it to him. Really? It's like that for me. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Persistence.
Well, and you're in some kind of dialogue.
Yeah.
With whatever that is.
What I was saying is that once I forgave my father, I always told myself that I'll be a better father than my father. I'll be a better parent than my parents. But I really had no idea what that looked like. Okay. So that's when I started doing just reading books on self-help books. I didn't know what I was looking for, but that's when I started doing it.
Yeah, good for you.
And the book that really changed me was a book by Jonathan Haidt. It was called The Righteous Mind. It's called Why Good People Are Divided by Religion and Politics.
Oh, okay.
And he has sense compared to a lot of people that are on the internet. He's a professor at NYU, and he is a psychology professor. Mm-hmm. Younger guy. I want to say probably in like his 40s. But for whatever reason, that book spoke to me. And then ever since then, I've just been on this looking for answers. Not really sure where I'm going to land at. Yeah. And that's how I found Robert Bly, found your book, found a bunch of different books. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, that breakthrough period of time that we've talked about, several examples for me, it was a combination of in my therapy, my Jungian analysis, I came to realize that I did not want the kind of woman that my society, my culture told me I should want.
And what is that type of woman?
White, intellectual, professional, with whom I could have stirring intellectual conversations.
Okay.
I think
society tells us all we need a white woman that's intellectual.
Yeah, right.
Regardless of what race you are.
and it finally came out. I came to the realization that's not what I wanted, and it's not what I'd ever wanted.
Yeah.
And my ideal was to marry a woman of color of some kind. Mm-hmm. With a simple soul, not a complex soul, not intellectual, and the purpose of marrying her would not be to have stirring intellectual conversations, till 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
In fact, I had been in love with Mexico from the time I could remember, and Mexican women.
Yeah.
And what I'm conscious of the point at which I'm conscious anyway of it starting was my mother's first teaching job was to teach migrant workers' children, grade school kids.
Yes.
And we she took us. She was loaning a young boy, I don't know what grade it was, young, a book. So we went to their place, and it was a migrant shack, basically, and but pleasant, And I was like, I don't know, that 5 or 6, 7 years old, maybe. We walk in, and his older sister, she seemed like a young woman to me. She was probably 12, but to a little kid, she seemed the warmth and the sweetness and the kindness and the beauty of that. And by simple versus complex souls, I don't mean one is better than the other.
Yeah.
They're just different. And some people have more complexities to work through than others.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that, and I felt that's what I want. That's beautiful beauty on earth, of soul. And that's what I found in Olga.
Yeah.
Many years later. So it was a coalescence of finally getting to the point in my therapy where I could admit what I really wanted in a woman, but also in everything else, and who I really am.
I was going to ask you, do you think that's connected to knowing who you are?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Okay.
You can't find the right friends, the right partners, the right anything, the right jobs, the right anything unless you know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the men's movement came in at that time for me too, and gave, feminism had, women certainly have a gripe. They certainly do. And in terms of sexual abuse and unwanted sexual advances and all that sort of thing, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that movement, feminist movement, came in with such hatred of men and maleness. It's like, and I had already been fighting that my young life with my mother.
Yeah.
And I said, fuck this shit. There is, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we're not all abusers. And of course, and my love of ancient civilizations and so forth had shown me that, and I'm sorry if this isn't politically correct, but that the difference between cultures and civilization, not to cut women out of it, they had an important part in the agricultural revolution. They did.
Yes.
But civilization got organized by kings.
Yeah.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. For good or for ill, civilization everywhere, in Africa, in Asia, in Middle America, in China, in India, got organized by men.
Yeah.
Well, aren't you glad for civilization? I mean, parts of it anyway. I wouldn't be alive today if it hadn't been for modern medicine.
Women are afraid of, women are being, I want to say trained to be afraid of masculinity.
Yeah.
But really, I don't think a lot of women are aware that the solution to healing the issue that we have in the country with masculinity is having more masculine men, more masculine, mature men.
That's true.
That's the real solution to it.
Yep, it is. If you mean that in the right way,
I mean that in the most mature,
mature, generative,
exactly,
and so forth.
Exactly.
Right. And that's how I got involved. Robert Moore, one of my professors at Chicago Theological Seminary,
Mm.
Jungian guy, with teaching it in a Christian seminary. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because Jung was not Christian, but he certainly had a lot of the roadmap, of spiritual and psychological truth, I think.
Mm.
And Robert was combining Christian theology and Jungian thought. And so anyway, make the story short, I graduated, got a church, and was on the point of losing it, because churches always hired me. Dying churches always hired me to try to save them.
How so?
Dying, running out of money, running out of people.
And how did they try to use you to save them?
Oh, they thought I was charismatic.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
And I was, but not because I was running from anything, and I had no dreams of empire,
Yeah.
I just, but I had a vision for how churches could reform and restart.
Yeah.
Basically as a fresh kind of enterprise. Christian in some senses, but anyway, it never worked, because they always hired me too late. But what was my point? Oh, as that first church was dying, no, it was the second church that was dying. Yeah. They always hired me too late.
Mm.
I mean, I always increased membership, but the money was so far down already that there was no way to grow fast enough to, So, and he asked me if I would write a book with him. Robert Moore did. A couple years after I graduated.
How old were you at this time?
I was in West Rogers Park in Chicago, and my church was in Evanston.
Okay.
Which is, well, not from here, from Chicago, just north of Chicago on the lake.
Uh-huh.
I said, okay, what are we writing about? And so he told me, his ideas about 4 major archetypes governing male behavior, whatever the culture, whatever the civilization, whatever the epoch. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. I had a strong Jungian background. And I said, so we started working on that. That's one of those examples that I mentioned in general before of going on strike against the conditions, the situation that are being offered to you.
Yeah.
And then the universe finally says, okay, he's serious.
Yeah.
So let's give him this chance,
Mm.
So, and, I could put all my knowledge of comparative cultures and religions, so forth, together, plus the Jungian stuff, and write these books. We sold the first one, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, to Harper San Francisco with no proposal, no nothing, just a letter.
Yeah.
Said, would you consider blah, blah, blah. They wrote back and offered us real money. Just like that.
Okay.
So we did it. And the further but before it was actually written, Robert had, I know I'm segueing here and keep going off in the distance, but Robert had figured out these 4 foundational archetypes. And he had some sense of their shadows, that they all had shadows. That's the Jungian teaching too. And I'll never forget, one day we were sitting in a cafe in Hyde Park in Chicago. And I said, Bob, I think the shadows of these archetypes are bipolar. I think there's an active side and a passive side. Mm-hmm. We just sat in astounded silence for a moment or two, because that is the key to accessing the archetype in its fullness, is to realize that you have these two opposite poles pulling at you.
I was just going to ask you, I get exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at different parts in your time, like, for example, I mean, me growing up where I was at, the warrior was active, but now my warrior is a lot more passive than it was. So yeah, the poles.
You shift between them
when you need them.
When you need them.
Yeah.
But most, I don't know if it's many, most, or what,
a
lot of men are possessed by one of the poles of the shadows of the archetypes, like the tyrant.
Yeah.
Or the when we're talking about the king, or the I'm trying to think of the word, senior moment. Sorry. What are the guys that abdicate? The abdicator, right? They drop their power.
Yes.
And run from it. Or the warrior, the sadistic warrior, as the active pole. I'm afraid that a lot of warriors, I don't mean all by any means, but a lot of warriors and warrior type guys in warrior type professions, really warrior, or athletics, or, or business, become possessed by the sadistic side of the warrior, the killer.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what's wrong with capitalism, in my view.
Yeah.
It encourages that. And not that we shouldn't fight for a good cause, and we ourselves are usually good causes. But it's like Tom Cruise says in the new movie Maverick. Jet fighter pilot. They keep trying to fire him, throw him out of the military because he's such a risk-taking jerk and ruined so many planes and so forth.
Yeah.
And he says, being a fighter pilot is not what I do. It's who I am. And I thought, well, there it is, possession. When you identify yourself as a profession, and especially a profession that draws on one or the other or both shadow sides of an archetype, you're in trouble.
Do you think there's any connection between mental health and a person's failure to fully integrate?
Well, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay, so
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I said before, that it's difficult to be a human being. It's really difficult because there's so much stuff that we're made of. So many different impulses, so many different influences. And if you add in other dimensions and spirits and so forth, it's even harder. And it's so easy to be seduced by the shadow sides of the archetypes. It's so easy. It's the easiest thing in the world.
Because it's easy.
It
doesn't take courage.
It doesn't take courage. It doesn't take insight. It doesn't take work.
Yeah. And most people are lazy.
Yeah. I mean, they're occupied with other things. That's true.
More kinder about it than I am, but I mean, that's just what I've seen.
But they are lazy too. Yeah. It's a lot of work, and not everybody can or is equipped really to do it. I mean, but what a different world it would be I think if we were interested and if we did do the work, geez.
You know, I asked a coworker of mine, name was Flint. I asked him a few years back. We're from the same area. He just spent most of his time in Texas. He's older than I am. And we both basically reconnected in Utah, and we worked for this company. And I was sharing with him a story that I had, an experience that I had when I was younger. I love to fight. I mean, I always loved it since I was a baby. You know, my family, they try to put me in it, and I was in it, but they didn't let kids like compete. But I've done competitive martial arts, competitive karate, competitive boxing. I just like it, you know. Just
I know what you mean. Me too.
So, in my neighborhood, I used to get in fights a lot, you know, with guys. I was never the bully though. I promise you. I was never the bully, but if somebody tried to bully me, I never stopped it. I would like make it worse than it was.
Yeah.
So there was this one time when I was 14, this kid, we were playing basketball, this kid tried to take our ball, and I said, "Hey man, don't take our ball, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna get you, you know." And I'm always very calm. You know, that's what people always know is I'm really calm. And they'd be like, Ryan, even when you fight, you're so calm. I'm just a calm person.
Yeah.
But once he took the ball, I beat him up. And I remember when I hit him and the look in his eye, it made me sick.
Of what? What look?
Like his eyes like pierced through me. Like he was so shocked that he was getting beat up. And then
Yeah.
And I looked at him, and even though he was being a troll, I felt sad. I felt like I did something. It made me sick. Yeah. It didn't I never had that feeling before when I was in a fight. But that feeling, my friends were tough guys. My friends didn't know, but that changed me.
How old were you?
I was 14.
14.
And I told my coworker this, right? And I said, the thing that really bugs me out is that some of the guys I grew up with, they went to prison. Some of them killed people. Some of them killed like over 10 people.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, man, I wonder, did any of them ever have that same moment that I had when I fought that kid? Yeah. Did they ever pull a gun on somebody and they had like that conscious feeling like, this is wrong? Yeah. And he said they probably did at one point in time. It's just some people just get lost.
Yeah.
Once they cross that line.
No, it's true.
You know?
Yeah. And I'm not being anti-aggression.
Yes.
You know, and what I'm saying, aggression in at least up to some limit or other, in a worthy cause or to protect people you love or to stand up for yourself it is part of who we are, and it is a good part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I never loved to fight, although I had to fight a lot as a kid because my younger brother had a big mouth. And so
that's how my younger brother.
So, you know, like once a week on the way home from school, I'd see a pile of boys on the sidewalk up ahead. And I knew in the middle down was my brother. And so I'd have to haul him off and punch him and, you know, and rescue him. But I loved one-on-one sports.
Okay.
In high school.
Yeah.
And college, I was a really good wrestler, shitty baseball player, even worse with basketball. But I love fencing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I love that.
Distance and,
you know, and, but I did realize that if I kept fighting, I was probably in junior high school. If I kept fighting physically, unless it was a controlled thing like a sport, bad things were going to happen. And so I was being bullied by these two guys in junior high school. I thought of all the, of course, if I had taken them on physically, they would have beaten the shit out of me. Just,
Yeah.
and so I worked on it inside. What can I do? And it struck me that the reason they're picking on me is I'm this smart kid. They're, come from the other side of the tracks, whatever, and have no interest in education at all and hate me for who I am.
You make them feel small.
Yeah. And so I thought about it, and I decided, you know what? I think what they need is recognition from me. So I found out their names, didn't even know their names, and then the next opportunity that came up, I said, "Hi, so and so," and "Hi, so and so." They never bothered me again. I was right. They felt like less than, and they simply needed to be recognized.
Yeah.
Similar thing happened to me. Well, I could tell you lots of stories, but the strategy has worked. I don't mean it would work in a knife point mugging.
Yeah.
But it's worked in everything short of that.
Yes.
And that is a way to be a warrior, I think, who will only resort to violence if it is absolutely the last option.
If you have to.
Yeah.
If you have to. If you can't walk away. I'm a lot more passive now.
Yeah.
My grandfather, he was, I've only seen him twice.
Mm.
I flew out to Wichita 2 weeks ago because he's dying of cancer.
Oh.
He was in prison for 24 years.
Oh, wow.
My dad told me, hey, it'd mean a lot to me if you go see your grandfather.
Yeah.
So I went to go see him. I didn't know what to expect, but I felt like I needed to see him because I wouldn't get another opportunity to see him. And couldn't talk to him about anything deep because he doesn't have the energy, he's low.
Yeah.
What was crazy for me, though, is that he looked like me. His temperament was like me. It seemed like it. But at some point in time, he just made bad decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me, why do you like to fight? And I said, it's not for no violent. I don't like hitting people necessarily. I don't like that. I was like, I just always liked it when I was a kid, and it's just it was part of my character. And he said he doesn't like fighting. He said he never liked it. He said he's just seen some bad things. And he said, my mother used to tell me, he says his mother was a sweet woman, but his mother used to tell him growing up, keep the peace. Mm-hmm. And it didn't dawn on him until he was an older man that she had her reasons for saying that, because she probably had a lot of brothers. She probably had experiences.
Yeah.
But he didn't realize how important it was to keep the peace until he got older, And he was basically trying to let me know, violence is not the way.
That's cool. That's cool. He's gone now.
He's still there. I saw him 2 weeks ago. I saw him 2 weeks ago. Wow. But he's fading. I can tell you so.
Yeah. Well, the aggression of the warrior has properly channeled, has helped the creation of civilization.
Okay.
It has. Without warriors, kings could not have implemented their plans. Magicians, meaning, not conjuring, but
the creators
and so on, could not have realized their creations. And lovers wouldn't be safe. Not that lovers are safe to this day, but also all of these things benefit us if they're channeled
correctly.
Yeah, it makes us glorious.
You said something.
Creatures.
You said something about guys. They wanted to be seen. They want to be acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard it like that, but I've concluded the same thing when it comes to gang activity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the guys that I saw that I knew growing up since we were kids that joined gangs, a lot of them were at some point in time, somebody probably told them they were stupid,
Yeah.
or they felt like they were invisible, they weren't seen,
Right.
and they wanted to be seen, so they joined that gang. Some of them were smart. Some of them were smart kids.
Yeah.
Good great grades in school, but they just weren't. They weren't seen. They wanted to be a part of something.
Right. Right.
Camaraderie. You
Right.
know.
Yeah, I do
and
know.
And you get status when you join a gang.
Right. I remember not quite the same thing, but I was I think I told you, conscientious objector during Vietnam.
Yes.
It's not that I didn't enjoy fighting, or that I thought that I couldn't kill people, because I knew I could.
Yeah.
It's that, and I knew there was the camaraderie that I would be missing with my fellow soldiers, and the Marines offered me a position as a navigator in a fighter bomber, and I had always wanted to be in military jets.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed like a dream come true.
Yeah.
And but I struggled with it, and I thought about the people that I would be killing on the ground that I had nothing against. They weren't in my country. They weren't invading my country.
Yeah.
They were actually fighting a corrupt South Vietnamese government.
Yeah.
So I would actually be on their side. But whether or not, I mean, I thought about that. I thought, could I live the rest of my life glued together and happy, or even sane, living with the realization that I had killed people in their country that I had nothing against?
Mm.
And would the government somehow or another glue me back together? The answer to both questions was no.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do it. And in a way, I miss the opportunity that I had for camaraderie, for the excitement of flying military jets, for I was very patriotic at the time too, and not that I'm not, but I mean, I thought we were probably, stand up for the United States and et cetera, and let the communists know that. But sometimes you just, if I had done it, I would have been seduced by the shadow.
I see.
Warrior.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that for myself or for the people that I would be hurting and killing. That I would be part of the problem.
Yeah.
Of darkness.
I got one more question for you, Doug.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what are some key challenges that men face in today's society, and how can they address these challenges while maintaining a healthy sense of masculinity?
Oh, God. Okay, that's a zinger. Say it again, please.
What are some key challenges that men face in today's society, and how can they address these challenges while maintaining a healthy sense of masculinity?
Yeah, okay. First part, becoming, or staying, depending on where you are in life, human. In an era that is increasingly non-human or a-human. I'm talking about the way companies treat their workers. I'm talking about social media. Talking about the whole, there's this whole mechanized, computerized thing that is taking over. I mean, people don't even call each other anymore.
Yeah.
They text.
Yeah.
Or some other thing. And they do that. They never have to interact directly. It's all, they're hiding. They're behind this anonymity or semi-anonymity. And so they feel free to be jerks. And so the biggest challenge to men is not economic, although there is that in a society that is clearly ratcheting down. But the biggest, and of course, relations with the opposite sex, as we talked, one time I said, once you take the romance out of it, it's just a meat market.
Yeah.
And believe me, with a 26-year-old daughter, I know that.
Yeah.
School dances are not what they used to be.
Yeah, they're not.
And when there was still romance and not
the slow dance.
There's no such thing.
Yeah.
It's all hyper, and the girls over there and the boys are over there, and it's like, what are you even doing at a dance if you're not going to dance with each other? What is that?
Yeah.
Exercise? Better to go to the gym. So I think being human, becoming and staying human in the face of all this distancing from each other, that's the main thing. And of course, part of being human is being what we've been talking about, all the stuff we've been talking about, integration of the wayward or the alienated or the aspects of ourselves that we haven't allowed to be part of us in our lives that are madder than hell at us because we have not allowed them to the table, at the table. And so, but in addition, men have had at least an equal, if not a greater role in building just, safe, kind societies as women have. And does our society look more just, more kind, safer to you? It doesn't to me. So I think men have a challenge, the challenge too of stopping this dehumanizing and of each other, which is even easier than it used to be. It was always done. It's even easier now with social media.
No consequences.
Yeah. I mean, look at some of these jerks. They can say, I won't name names, but they can say anything they want to on social media, and there are no consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So being human. And I would, of course, suggest to men that they be human along the lines that Robert Moore's and my books suggest. Now, and then you had another part of that. What was?
Key challenges that men face in today's society, and how can they address these challenges while maintaining a healthy sense of masculinity?
Simple answer, do what you're doing. I do think that Bob and I'm not saying our material on the psyche is the end all and be all.
Yeah.
But I'm saying I do believe it's an important building block. It is. So do your work. Do your inner work. If you're doing your inner work, some of this other stuff will fall into place. The social interactions will fall into place.
Mm.
I mean, we could say a lot more, but
Doug, I would comment on that, but I think you ended that so lovely. I just want to end it right on there. Right, that statement was so good. I'm gonna end it right there, man.
Okay.
Anyways, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for allowing me to come to your beautiful home.
Thank you for coming. What an honor for me that you fly from Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Yeah. To come here and do this in person. See, now there right there is an example of we're trying to do the technology, right?
Yeah.
What we started with originally, the technology didn't work. Yay!
So now it's even better.
It's
Even
even better in person.
Build a better relationship. You get a sense of the character of the person you're speaking to.
Right.
You know, the
Right.
soul, you can feel the person you're speaking to.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's always better.
Yeah, it is.
But anyways, thanks, Doug, and wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, Daron. Igualmente, as they say in Spanish. Equally to you.